All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for the delay. We had a later than usual calendar. The state of Florida will call its case.
Your Honor, the state may address the case of Jaden Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Robert Bowers for Jaden Perkins. Mr. Perkins is coming forward. He is present before the court to my right in custody.
Christina Stiffer on behalf of the state.
Your Honor, we do have a proposed disposition for the court, if I may proceed.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, Mr. Perkins has authorized counsel to withdraw his previous entered plea of not guilty. We would be entering a plea of guilty to the two-count information in this matter. Your Honor, count one is attempted murder in the second degree of a law enforcement officer. This is a mandatory life felony. I have provided in the plea form that will be waived for the purpose of the proposed disposition. And count two is resisting an officer with violence, a felony in the third degree carrying up to 5 years. And Your Honor, the proposed disposition in this matter in regards to count one is that Mr. Perkins will plead guilty. He'll be adjudicated guilty. He'll be sentenced to 10 years in the Florida State Prison. He has 721 days credit. And Your Honor, count one will be followed by 10 years of drug offender probation. And Your Honor, the back page of the 3-page plea form lays out the 8 conditions of which the parties are in agreement in regards to that probationary portion. And count two will be a concurrent sentence of 5 years in the Florida State Prison with 721 days credit.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, I'm not aware of any DNA that would exonerate my client. I'll stipulate to a factual basis for purposes of the plea. And I do have the executed plea form as well as the waiver of PSI that are executed. And additionally, we're asking the court to reserve jurisdiction for 60 days for the purposes of any restitution in this matter.
I believe based on a new case that I saw, I'm just going to reserve jurisdiction for restitution, period, especially since he's going to be on probation. We impose the 60 days, but I don't think that it's enforceable. So I'll just reserve. Okay.
Yes,
Understood. And Your Honor, at this time, may I provide the executed plea forms to the court?
Yes. All right. Thank you. And is this also the state's recommendation?
It is, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you. You can put your hand down. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Perkins. Have you had enough time to go over the allegations against you, any defenses that you have to those allegations, and ask all the questions that you needed before you decided to enter this plea of guilty?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
Okay. And have you authorized your attorney to enter a plea of guilty on your behalf?
Yes, ma'am.
On the form, it indicates that you are entering this plea of guilty because you are guilty. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're admitting your guilt?
Yes, ma'am.
Your attorneys outlined the negotiated disposition, and I want you to understand that by admitting your guilt to the charged offenses, you're giving up the following rights. I'm going to go over those all at one time. If at any point in time you don't understand something I say, I want you to stop me and I'll try to explain it better. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
How old are you?
21.
Okay. All right. And what's the highest grade you completed?
I graduated high school.
Okay. So there's no problem with you stopping me. Okay. If you don't understand something, and I'll try to explain it better. Okay. All right. By entering these pleas of guilty, you're giving up the following rights. You're giving up the right to a trial. In the trial, you be presumed innocent, meaning that it's up to the state of Florida to prove its case against you beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt. You're represented by a lawyer. You're giving up the right to have your lawyer represent you throughout that trial, confront and cross-examine any of the witnesses that the state would call, and also object to any evidence that he thought was inadmissible against you. You're giving up the right to remain silent. If you chose to remain silent, I would instruct the jury that they couldn't think or infer that you're guilty because you chose to exercise that constitutional right. And as I've explained, you don't have to prove anything, but you could choose, if you wanted to, if you thought it was in your best interest, to present a case. And so in that, you're giving up the right to compel witnesses on your behalf. That's how you would get witnesses to court and compel their testimony if it was helpful to your defense. Additionally, you have the right to remain silent. You could choose to waive that right and testify in front of the jury. So in that, you're giving up the right to have the jury consider your side or your version of what happened in this case. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And as I've explained, you are giving up the right to a trial. So therefore, you're also giving up the right that if you were convicted at that trial, to appeal the conviction to a higher court than me, which is an appellate court. They will look over those proceedings and potentially others to determine if there were any errors. And so you would be giving up any benefit that you would have gotten if the appellate court found error and reverse a case. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Has anyone threatened or coerced you to get you to enter this plea?
No, ma'am.
Promised you anything outside of the negotiated disposition in this case?
No, ma'am.
And Mr. Bowers has already indicated that he's not aware of any DNA. Is the state?
There's no known to the state, Your Honor.
Okay. And in this form, it indicates and goes over that there are potential implications for Jimmy Rice and immigration. Did you go over those 2 paragraphs? It appears on the 3rd page of this form.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. They probably don't apply, but do you understand that that could be a potential impact based upon this plea?
I do.
Okay. And you still wish to go forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you currently under the influence of any drug, alcohol, or medical condition, or any condition that would impact your ability to understand what's going on here today?
No, ma'am, I'm not.
All right. And Mr. Bowers, I do understand that you stipulate to a factual basis, but based on the length of the sentence, I'd ask the state to provide one.
Understood.
Yes, Your Honor. Had this case proceeded to trial, the state would have been prepared to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, Jaden Perkins, on July 16th, 2020, in the county of Duval, state of Florida, did unlawfully and by an act imminently dangerous to another and evincing a depraved mind regardless of human life, although without any premeditated design to effect the death of any individual, did attempt to kill TS, a law enforcement officer engaged in the lawful performance of a legal duty, knowing that TS was a law enforcement officer, contrary to the provisions of Florida law. And specifically, Your Honor, in the early morning hours of July 16th, 2020, the defendant did knowingly and voluntarily take a hallucinogenic substance, which caused him to begin to behave erratically. He went to a restaurant in the Atlantic Beach area and harassed or encountered some of the employees there who called for police services. Officer TS from the Atlantic Beach Police Department responded, was knocked unconscious by this defendant, and this defendant did begin to kick and beat on him. As to count 2, the state would have proved that the defendant did knowingly and willfully resist, obstruct, or oppose DJ, an officer of the Atlantic Beach Police Department, in the lawful execution of a legal duty by offering or doing violence to said person, contrary to the provisions of Florida law. Specifically, when backup officers from the Atlantic Beach Police Department arrived, the defendant initially complied with their orders, but then made threats and ran towards the officer, attempting to grab his firearm. Subsequently, the responding officers discharged their firearms and the defendant was struck.
Okay. The court, and you also stipulate, as you previously indicated.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The court will find that there is a sufficient factual basis to accept the pleas as to attempted murder in the 2nd degree and also resisting an officer without violence. All right. Mr. Perkins, the court will find that your plea is freely, knowingly, and voluntarily entered with a full understanding of the nature, terms, and consequences of your plea. And I'm signing the form indicating my findings. Does the state of Florida have any evidence to present prior to sentencing?
I do, Your Honor. Officer Stafford is present and he has asked me to read a victim impact statement on his behalf. I'm going to have him come forward
All right.
while I read it.
Thank you. And as the officer is coming forward, I am signing the waiver of pre-sentence investigation report. Do you agree not to have that filed or prepared in your case, Mr. Perkins?
I'm
The
sorry.
waiver of the pre-sentence investigation. Do you agree to not have that
Yes,
prepared in your case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I'll accept that waiver as freely and voluntarily entered. All right, Ms. Stifler.
Yes, Your Honor. And Officer Stafford, the victim in this case, is present. He's been involved in this case during its pendency, and he is in agreement with this disposition. As Your Honor is aware, we did have a sit-down meeting with Officer Stafford and the defendant and counsel, as well as his commander, at which time they were able to speak. And then this is the statement that Officer Stafford has provided. July 16th, 2020 is a day that I can't remember, but also a day that I will never forget. The attack left me bloody, unconscious, and severely injured. I awoke in the hospital without any knowledge or understanding as to what had occurred or why I was there. Investigators explained to me that someone had tried to kill me. However, I was saved by Officer Joyner's intervention. I could not understand why anyone would try to kill me. I spent 30 years in law enforcement with the desire to help people. Why would someone want to kill me? I had to call my family and tell them that I had been transported to the hospital by rescue, but I didn't know why or what had happened. I knew this call had to be terrifying to my family. The thought that I was almost taken from my family was terrifying to me. The looks on the faces of family, coworkers, and investigators when they saw me let me know that my injuries were very significant. The lack of knowledge or any memory of the incident was even more concerning to me than the visible injuries. I was advised that I would need facial reconstructive surgery. I was also advised that my eye would need to be raised as it was depressed as a result of the countless blows sustained to my head and face. I've had several surgeries as a result of this senseless attack. Visually, I have been left with only minor scars. Physically, I have been left with a traumatic brain injury, neurological injuries, a cervical spine injury, a spinal cord injury, a torn rotator cuff, left arm, wrist, and hand injuries, a left eye injury to include drastically reduced vision, vestibular injuries to include reduced hearing and tinnitus, a balance disorder and vertigo, severe headaches, cognitive issues, and severe pain throughout my entire body. Collectively, the senseless attack and sustained injuries have taken away my career as a law enforcement officer. These injuries have taken away my abilities to do many things that brought me enjoyment in life. These injuries have taken away so much from me and my family. These injuries took a police officer from the community and the department. The injuries have had a tremendous emotional effect on me and my family. We have all endured so much stress and uncertainty as to my recovery and future. There's been added stress battling with workers' comp insurance carrier for needed evaluations, treatments, and surgeries. The senseless attack and sustained injuries have had a profound impact on every facet of my life. There is not a day that goes by that is not directly affected by this senseless attack on July 16th, 2020. I pray daily for everyone that this incident has affected, including you, Jaden Perkins. I pray for my family and friends as they have lost a lot of the person that I used to be. I pray for you, Jaden Perkins, and your family, as I know they have lost a lot of the person that you used to be. I pray that God uses your life and mine to have a positive impact on the lives of those around us. I refuse to live with hate or anger on my mind or in my heart. We live in a world where there has to be law and order to maintain peace, safety, life, and liberty. There has to be consequences to injustices to law and order. I've spent 30 years in a career seeking exactly that for our community. I cannot change the attack that occurred on July 16th, 2020, or the profound effect it has had on both of our lives. I do, however, refuse to live with hate on my mind or in my heart. One of God's greatest gifts to us is forgiveness. Although I will never forget the horrible attack that occurred on July 16th, Jaden Perkins, I do forgive you and hope that God blesses you and your family. Officer Stafford, police officer with the City of Atlantic Beach, retired officer with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. And Your Honor, a copy for filing.
Yes. If you'll mark that as State's Exhibit 1. Officer Stafford, thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you so much for your grace. There's a lot of power in that. And you have, it looks like an entire community that's there to support you. There's power in forgiveness. You're exactly right. I know that you all have had a sit-down discussion, and I hope that the weight and the power of this man's forgiveness will never leave you, Mr. Perkins. That you will never do anything like that again. Is Officer Joyner here?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Absolutely incredible. Thank you. Are both sides ready to proceed?
If I may have a moment. Your Honor, would the court allow Mr. Perkins an opportunity to address the parties?
Yes.
I'm not gonna say too much, but I just want to say thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself and to become a better man, because I'm not proud of having this type of impact on so many people. And Mr. Stafford, I thank you. I remember our conversation. I will always remember our conversation. And I want you to know that my words mean something, and that I'll work from this day to become a better man and to help whoever I can along the way. And I hope you can still find some sort of joy. I'm done. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Perkins, you're getting ready to serve a prison sentence. You can either use that time to become worse, or you can use that time to become better. I hope your words do mean something. All right. Are both sides ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Perkins, based upon your pleas of guilty, the court will follow the negotiated disposition. As it relates to count one, the court will adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to 10 years in the Florida State Prison with credit for 721 days. As it relates to count two, the court will also adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to 5 years in the Florida State Prison with credit for 721 days. As to count one, your incarceration will be followed by 10 years of drug offender probation. And that is to complete the following special conditions. All general conditions will apply, as well as you will participate in Operation New Hope or the equivalent of a reentry program. You will either be a full-time student or maintain full-time employment, or if neither one of those are available, you will make 5 job applications per week. Additionally, you will undergo a task evaluation and do any recommended follow-up treatment. This court, at the request of your counsel and without objection by the state of Florida, will enter a separate order indicating that this court will make a non-binding recommendation to the Department of Corrections that you serve your sentence in a facility that would aid you in some type of drug treatment during the course of your prison sentence. And then hopefully that will give you a head start on the drug offender probation that you are to follow after your incarceration. Counts 1 and 2 will run concurrently with each other. The court will impose court costs in the amount of, I'm sorry, I didn't finish those special conditions. I apologize. You will participate in all requested law enforcement training exercises and seminars. You will go to at least 5 high school speaking engagements about consequences of first-time drug use. You will complete 100 hours of community service. You will undergo random urinalysis, and the court is now going to impose a $518 in court costs plus a $50 application fee. The court will reserve jurisdiction for restitution in this case. Did I miss anything?
No, ma'am.
No, Your Honor.
All right. The last thing I need to let you know, Mr. Perkins, is if you feel like the sentence I've imposed is illegal, or if there's an error in the sentence, you have 30 days from today to appeal the court sentence. If you can't afford an attorney, I'll appoint one to represent you. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Officer Williams, did you need something? You're on mute. You're on mute. Could you try again? Officer Williams, you must not be connected to the audio. All right, just have him sit on the side and they'll communicate with Officer Williams. Yes, are you waiving the life?
Yes, Your Honor, the state would waive the statutory enhancement.
Okay. Does she need to sign anything?
782.065.
Okay,
Thank you, Your Honor.
all right, thank you.
Thank the court for its time. Your Honor, may I be excused?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may be excused.
Yes. Mhm. Thank you. I thought it was more. No, man, I said thank you.
Address, contact page. I get taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Is Miss Wheeler Sanchez still here? Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me now, Your Honor?
Yes,
Yes, okay, thank you. Officer Woody, can you get the information for me? And
Yes,
text it to me? Thank you, thank you, Honor. Thank you, Honor.
thank you. I need you to stand by for the next case.
Yes, Your Honor, I am. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Is Mr. Durden here?
Yes, Your Honor, I'll go.
Okay. Good afternoon. All right, sorry